Christmas morning at my parents' house always felt like walking into a courtroom where I'd already been declared guilty. The tree glittered with imported ornaments. The presents were wrapped in embossed designer paper. Everything looked perfect. Except me. I sat in the corner with my laptop balanced on my knees, answering emails while soft jazz played in the background. "Avery, it's Christmas," Mom said sharply. "Can you put that away for one day?" "2 minutes," I replied without looking up. "It's always 2 minutes," my older brother Nathan muttered from the couch. He was 35, a cardiologist at a prestigious hospital, wearing silk pajamas and superiority like a tailored suit. Some of us actually prioritize family. Nathan was everything my parents had ever dreamed of. Successful. Stable. Respectable. I was the cautionary tale. "Avery's building her imaginary empire again," my younger sister Lila sang from across the room. She was 28, a corporate attorney engaged to a hedge fund manager. Dad walked in with coffee and set the tray down harder than necessary. "We need to talk." I closed my laptop slowly. I already knew what this was. "Avery, you're 32, Dad began. And you're still pretending to run a tech company." "I'm running a tech company." Nathan laughed. "You've been saying that for 9 years. At some point, you have to admit it didn't work." I founded SkyForge Systems at 23 after graduating from Stanford with a computer science degree my family barely acknowledged. They wanted me in medical school like Nathan. Instead, I chose code over stethoscopes. "Our company is doing well," I said calmly. Mom shook her head. "If it was, you wouldn't live in a tiny apartment driving that ancient Toyota. You work 80 hours a week for a company no one's heard of," Lila added. "We're worried." They formed a semicircle around me. "An intervention." Nathan leaned forward. "We got you interviews. IT department at my hospital, $70,000 a year. Benefits. Stability. A real job." "You don't have a career," Dad said firmly. "You have a hobby." And in that moment, I realized something. They had already decided who I was. "You're 32 with no savings, no retirement plan, no husband, no children," Nathan continued, his tone clinical and cold. "At some point, you have to admit this isn't working." The word working echoed in my head. SkyForge Systems had 28 employees. We were serving 63 enterprise clients. 4 of them were Fortune 100 companies. But none of that mattered here. "You don't understand what I'm building," I said carefully. "Then explain it," Dad challenged. "Show us proof." I could have. The contracts. The patents. The revenue reports. The cap table showing my 23% equity stake. Instead, I said the only thing I could. "I can't." "Not yet." A collective groan filled the room. "Not yet," Lila repeated mockingly. "It's always not yet with you." Nathan stood up, pacing. "This is delusion, Avery. Sunk cost fallacy. You've wasted 9 years. That doesn't mean you should waste 10. Wasted. 9 years of 3AM deployments. 9 years of investor rejections before the yes. 9 years of payroll anxiety and impossible deadlines. Wasted." "My time hasn't been wasted," I said quietly. Mom's voice softened, but her words didn't. "Sweetheart, we love you. But love means telling the truth. This tech fantasy is hurting you." Dad slid a folder across the coffee table. Nathan arranged interviews at his hospital. IT department, $70,000 starting salary. Benefits. Stability. A real career, Nathan added. I have a real career. No, Dad said firmly. You have a dream that failed. The room felt smaller. You're embarrassed of me, I said. Silence. Lila avoided my eyes. Nathan sighed. We're worried about you. No, I corrected. You're worried about how I reflect on you. That hit harder than I expected. Dad's voice rose. Enough. You are failing, Avery. And we cannot sit here and pretend otherwise. I stood up slowly, picking up my laptop. I'm not taking the interviews. Nathan threw up his hands. Fine. Hit rock bottom. Maybe that's what it'll take. Maybe, I replied calmly. What they didn't know was that tomorrow morning would change everything. And I had decided I wanted them to see it unfold in real time. I left before dessert. The door closed behind me with a finality that felt heavier than it should have. Snow dusted the driveway as I walked to my car, the same 12-year-old Toyota they loved to mock. The irony almost made me smile. The drive back to San Francisco took 90 minutes. My phone buzzed constantly in the passenger seat. Family group chat. Mom, we are just trying to help. Lila, you're being impossible. Nathan, call me. We're not done. I silenced the notifications. A different message sat unread at the top of my screen. Marcus Reed. My co-founder. My CTO. The only person who had been there since the beginning. Roadshow went perfectly. Morgan Stanley confirmed. Tomorrow changes everything. Tomorrow was December 26. SkyForge Systems would go public on NASDAQ at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. We had priced at $68 per share. Post-IPO valuation, $7. $2 billion. My 23% stake would be worth roughly $1. $65 billion. 9 years of being called delusional. 9 years of, when are you getting a real job? 9 years of polite smiles and whispered pity. Tomorrow, it would all be public. Irrefutable. By the time I reached downtown San Francisco, the city lights reflected off the glass towers like scattered stars. I pulled into the private garage beneath my building and parked beside a Tesla and a Porsche. Neither of which my family knew about. I rode the elevator to the top floor and stepped into my 3-bedroom penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the skyline. Original art lined the walls. The silence inside felt controlled, intentional. Not suffocating. I changed into sweats and opened my laptop again, not because I was addicted to work, but because tomorrow was too important for mistakes. Final IPO documents. Legal confirmations. Investor logins. At 11 p.m., my phone rang. Nathan. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. And again. Finally, I answered. I'm apologizing, he said stiffly. Dad asked me to. I was too harsh. Okay. A pause. But you still need to face reality, Avery. This tech thing isn't working. I stared at the city skyline. Big day tomorrow, I said calmly. Doing what? Something like that. I hung up. At 6 a.m. Pacific time, I would be watching the opening bell. And at 6:30, the world would know what my family never bothered to ask. I was awake before my alarm. 6 a.m. Pacific. The IPO would happen at 6:30 my time, 9:30 in New York. I made coffee but barely tasted it. My laptop was open on the dining table, video conference ready. Marcus was already at NASDAQ with our CFO, standing near the ceremonial bell. My phone buzzed non-stop. Investors. Board members. Early employees. 9 years had led to this morning. At 6:15, I turned on CNBC. The anchors were reviewing market headlines when one of them smiled at the camera. And coming up after the break, the biggest tech IPO of the year. SkyForge Systems, a cloud infrastructure company you may not know yet, is about to make its founder one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the country. I exhaled slowly. Then my phone exploded. Family group chat. Mom, Avery, is this your company? Lila, there's a SkyForge going public right now. Nathan, this has to be a coincidence. I didn't respond. On screen, the NASDAQ ceremony began. Marcus stood confidently at the podium, holding the gavel. Cameras flashed. Applause echoed through the broadcast. SkyForge Systems begins trading this morning after pricing its IPO at $68 per share, the anchor announced. Founded 9 years ago by Avery Cole, the company has quietly built one of the most impressive enterprise cloud platforms in the industry. My name appeared on screen. My professional headshot filled the lower corner. Post-IPO valuation, $7. 2 billion. The ticker symbol flashed. SKFG. The first trade printed. $72. Then $75. Then $78. My phone started ringing. Dad. Nathan. Lila. I ignored them all. Cole retains a 23% stake in the company, CNBC continued. Currently valued at approximately $1.8 billion. By 6:50 a.m., the stock hit $84. By 7 a.m., $91. I sat in silence as the numbers climbed. Not smiling. Not celebrating. Just breathing. 9 years of dismissal condensed into one scrolling ticker line. My doorbell rang at 8:30 a.m. I didn't need to check the camera. Only one person would drive 90 minutes in silk pajamas to confirm reality. I opened the door. Nathan stood there, pale. Is it real? He asked. Yes, I replied. And for the first time in our lives, he had no words. Nathan stepped inside slowly, like he had entered the wrong address. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the San Francisco skyline. Morning light poured across polished hardwood floors. Abstract art hung on the walls. The furniture alone probably cost more than his yearly bonus. He turned in a slow circle. How long have you lived here? He asked quietly. 2 years. And you let us think you were still in that studio apartment. You assumed I was, I replied. I never corrected you. He sat down heavily on the couch. You're a billionaire, he said, as if testing the word. On paper. Most of it's in shares I can't sell for 6 months. But it's real. Yes. He stared at his hands. We told you to interview for a $70,000 IT job. I remember. We called you delusional. I remember that too. His voice cracked slightly. Avery. I'm sorry. I was cruel. We all were. I leaned against the kitchen counter, watching him. You didn't just doubt the company, I said calmly. You doubted me. He looked up, eyes red. Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you show proof? Because I shouldn't have needed proof, I answered. You should have trusted me. Silence filled the room. Outside, somewhere far below, a siren wailed and faded. You were building this the whole time, he asked. Yes. And we were trying to get you hospital interviews. Yes. He covered his face with his hands. Oh my God. My phone buzzed. Marcus, stock at $97. This is insane. I typed back, celebrate for me. I'm handling family. Nathan lowered his hands. What do I do now? He asked. About what? About us. I took a breath. The relationship we had is over, I said honestly. If we're going to have one moving forward, it has to be based on who I actually am. Not who you assumed I was. He nodded slowly. I can do that. Can you? I asked. Because the only thing that changed overnight was public validation. I was the same person yesterday. That landed harder than any insult. After a long pause, he stood. I don't know how to fix this. You can't fix the past, I said. You can only stop repeating it. He walked toward the door, smaller somehow. Will I see you again? He asked. Eventually, I replied. But I need space. He nodded and left. And for the first time since the opening bell, I allowed myself a small, quiet smile. Not because of the money. Because the truth had finally spoken for itself. By noon, the world knew my name. Bloomberg requested a live interview. Forbes wanted a cover story. Fortune asked for an exclusive profile. I accepted the most strategic ones and declined the rest. My phone buzzed endlessly, friends from college, distant relatives, former classmates who hadn't spoken to me in years. And family. Mom called first. I answered. Avery, her voice sounded smaller than I had ever heard it. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. I should have believed in you. Yes. The honesty surprised her into silence. We were worried, she continued softly. You weren't worried, I said calmly. You were certain you were right. A long pause. Can we talk? Really talk? Not today. I have interviews scheduled. Of course, she said quickly. Whenever works for you. The shift in tone was unmistakable. For 9 years, I had been the irresponsible one. Now I was the busy one. The Forbes article went live the next morning, from family disappointment to billionaire, how Avery Cole built SkyForge Systems. It detailed everything, the early rejections, the pivot that saved the company, the quiet enterprise contracts, the decision to reject acquisition offers from Amazon and Microsoft before choosing to go public. It even referenced family members who repeatedly pressured her to abandon the venture. Within hours, the story went viral. On social media, thousands shared their own stories of being doubted. Meanwhile, my family moved through stages. First, apologies. Long messages. Emotional voicemails. Repeated, "We're so proud of you now." Second, requests. Could I advise Nathan on investments? Could I connect Lila to venture capital contacts? Could I help a cousin get a tech job? Third, subtle resentment. Comments from extended relatives about luck and perfect timing. That was when I knew something important. The numbers had changed. But not everyone's mindset had. 2 weeks after the IPO, I agreed to dinner with my parents in San Francisco. They arrived dressed carefully, nervous. We were horrible to you, Dad said within 10 minutes. Yes, I replied evenly. Mom's eyes filled with tears. How do we fix it? You can't, I said. You can only do better moving forward. Dad leaned forward. Then let us support you. You didn't support me when it mattered, I said quietly. You waited until it was safe. Silence settled between us. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to earn their approval. And that felt more powerful than the IPO itself. 1 year after the IPO, SkyForge Systems was trading at $134 per share. The company had expanded into 3 new international markets and acquired 2 smaller competitors. Our valuation had crossed $10 billion. My net worth had passed $3 billion. On paper, it was the kind of story business schools wrote case studies about. In real life, it was quieter. I had launched a venture capital firm focused on funding female founders in enterprise tech. I sat on 3 corporate boards. Universities invited me to speak. Young entrepreneurs reached out daily, telling me they had watched the IPO with tears in their eyes. At Stanford, during a keynote speech, I said something that surprised even me: success on your own terms is worth more than success on someone else's terms. And the people who truly believe in you will believe before the world validates you, not after. The applause lasted longer than I expected. My relationship with my family remained complicated. We had dinner occasionally. Holidays were civil. Nathan and I had built something resembling a cautious friendship, no longer built on comparison, but not entirely free of it either. My parents tried. I could see it. But sometimes, when they looked at me, there was still a flicker of disbelief, like they were recalculating who I was in real time. 6 months after the IPO, I ran into Nathan at a tech conference. I've been reading about cognitive bias, he admitted awkwardly. I realized I never actually looked at what you were building. I just assumed it was nothing because it didn't fit my definition of success. That's accurate, I replied. Is there any chance, he hesitated, we can build something new? Maybe, I said. But it has to be real. No assumptions. No dismissals. He nodded. I haven't earned that trust back yet. No, I agreed. But you can try. And that was enough. The real victory wasn't the $7.2 billion IPO. It wasn't the CNBC headline. It wasn't watching my family sit frozen at Christmas breakfast while my name scrolled across national television. The real victory was simpler. 9 years ago, everyone around me said I was wrong. I trusted myself anyway. And that distance, between who they assumed I was and who I actually am, turned out to be worth far more than money. Though I'll admit, the money did make the point undeniable.